Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to jump right into a pretty provocative theory that's been bubbling up. The idea is that this recent storm of geopolitical events isn't just random chaos. Nope. The argument is that it's the deliberate shutdown of a global power structure, one that's been running our world for the last 75 years. And this quote right here from our source material really frames the whole conversation. It's not just about policy tweaks. The suggestion is that we're watching a fundamental reboot of the entire global system. That's a huge claim, right? So let's take a look at the evidence the source lays out. All right, so where's all this coming from? This whole analysis popped up in a post on Truth Social in mid-November of 2025, and it argues that a bunch of recent, high-profile events aren't disconnected at all. In fact, they're coordinated steps in a much, much bigger strategic game. So here's the core idea in a nutshell. What we're witnessing is the intentional, systematic takedown of the world order that was put in place right after World War II. The analysis claims that this whole system was deeply shaped by a British strategic playbook, and that playbook is now being tossed out the window on purpose. Okay, a claim that big needs some serious backup, and the source starts by pointing to some really interesting cracks appearing in one of the oldest, tightest intelligence alliances on the planet. Just look at this timeline. It's a whirlwind of activity, all jammed into a single week. You've got the FBI director making a deal in Beijing, a visit from Hungary's Prime Minister Orbán, a public statement questioning whether our allies are playing fair on trade, and then a direct clash with MI5 in London. It's a lot. And the argument is none of this is a coincidence. The first really big crack, according to this analysis, actually appeared back in July. The Director of National Intelligence sent out a memo that, poof, just like that, froze out America's closest partners, the Five Eyes countries, from all U.S. intelligence on the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. And as you can imagine, our allies were reportedly furious. They called it a unilateral gutting of trust that had been built over decades. And the way they did it was with this simple little classification: no foreign. It just means no foreign nationals. Sounds like boring bureaucracy, right? But with that one stamp, the entire Five Eyes network got cut out of the loop on what was arguably the most critical issue on the planet. A tiny bureaucratic move with massive strategic consequences. So, this leads us right into the next piece of the puzzle. The theory isn't just about pushing allies away, it's about a deliberate pivot towards engaging directly with rivals. And that just tears up the traditional foreign policy playbook. And this quote from an interview on Fox is basically presented as Exhibit A of this new thinking. For decades, the rule was stick with your allies. But this statement just flips that completely on its head. It challenges the whole idea, shifting the focus from alliance solidarity to a very blunt calculation of economic interest. This chart really breaks it down nicely. On the left, you've got the old way. Everything was about unity, about the group, like NATO or the Five Eyes. The new focus, on the right, it's all about one-on-one deals, talking directly to China, to Hungary, whoever. It's not about being in a club anymore. It's about making the best deal for America, period. And the travels of FBI Director Kash Patel are presented as a perfect case study. It's like night and day. He goes to China, and it's cooperative. They get a deal done to fight the fentanyl crisis. Then he goes to the UK, a classic ally, and it's confrontational. He reportedly clashes with the head of MI5, and the British end up calling him unpredictable. See the contrast? So you have to ask why? Why this huge shift, and why right now? Well, the analysis argues this isn't just about what's happening today. It says you have to look way, way back, all the way to the end of World War II. This isn't a new fight. It's the end of a very old one. The argument is that back then, there were two competing visions for the world. You had FDR's vision of sovereign nations and great powers all cooperating. And then you had Churchill's vision, a world permanently divided east versus west, managed behind the scenes through British influence. The source claims that for 75 years, the West went down Churchill's path, and what we're seeing now is a final decisive rejection of that model. And to really get what that model is, you have to understand this old doctrine, the British way in warfare. It's kind of brilliant in a ruthless way. The basic idea is you use your influence, your money, and your intelligence to get other nations to bear the human and financial costs of enforcing the world order that benefits you. And the claim is, the US is finally saying, we're done playing that part. And that's the key, right? The whole playbook depends on getting a major continental power, like the United States for the last 75 years, to spend its own blood and treasure to maintain a global balance that might, at the end of the day, primarily benefit somebody else. But it's not all just history. There's another huge piece to this puzzle, and it's all about technology. The source makes this really fascinating argument that this profound technological shift has made the entire old way of doing things, well, obsolete. This comparison is key. Back in the day, intelligence was all about geography. The US needed bases in places like the UK and Australia just to see the whole picture. But now, the source argues that with commercial satellites, Space Force, and powerful AI platforms, the US can get that same strategic awareness all on its own. We don't have to borrow our allies' eyes anymore. And yeah, look at this whole new tech stack. It's not just one thing. It's a whole suite of tools, from commercial space constellations to Palantir's AI to everything the NSA and Space Force are doing. The idea is that when you put all this together, you get a much clearer, less politicized picture of the world without having it filtered through an ally who might have their own agenda. And this quote just nails the whole technological argument. Once you have your own God's eye view, the political cost of breaking the old sharing rules drops close to zero. It's a powerful idea. If you can see everything yourself, you don't need to make compromises to get a piece of your partner's puzzle. The tech, in this view, literally changes the political reality. And that leads to the really provocative question at the heart of this whole thing. If you have a God's eye view, do you still need partners? Do alliances that were built for the Cold War still make sense in an age of AI and commercial space? According to this theory, the answer that's being given right now is maybe not. Okay, so let's bring it all home. We've got a strategic shift, a political shift, and a technological shift, all happening at once. What are the ultimate implications here? What's the end game? The takeaway here is profound. This isn't just a policy change. The source concludes that this is the quiet end of the Anglo-American condominium, that shared strategic brain that has guided the West since World War II, and it's just being switched off. This line from the source material is about as blunt as it gets. It really summarizes the whole thesis. We don't need the junior partners to run the empire anymore, because we're not running their empire anymore. Wow, that's basically a declaration of strategic independence, arguing that the US is clocking out of the job of managing a global system for its allies. And that's really the question this analysis leaves us with. It makes a case that we are living through a historic, under-the-hood transformation of global power. And if a 75-year-old order is really ending, the biggest question of all is, what comes next?